Hello everyone, it's Kim from the Fleece and Harmony Mill in Belfast, Prince Edward Island, and this is our knitting podcast and farm update and everything else that we can think of that we want to chat about this week. So welcome back for the viewers that have been watching us for quite a long time, and welcome to any new viewers that might be joining us for the first time or maybe have just found us recently. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to start with a farm update. We'll go over some whips and rips and the knitting projects that are being done. And we have a special segment because we have a Rowan Trunk show in the store. And then as always, we'll do the shop update. We're closer to the end of our regular session in the mill. And we will talk about twists in yarns, and that'll come up as we talk about our shop updates and so forth today as well. And as always, we'll end with the harmony part. And so a little moment of relaxation for you if you need it. And sometimes it's just nice to just take a little bit of a break and look at nature. And that's what we usually do in the harmony part. So getting right to the business of the farm update. There's not really anything new going on with the sheep. We always talk about the weather because it's always a bit crazy here and changeable. Last time we had a heat warning and a frost warning in the same week. Now we're fully into summer, I would say. Everything has greened up. The grass is growing like crazy. We haven't seen this in 3 or 4 years because we're getting intermittent rain with the sunny days, which is perfect growing weather for grass. So the sheep are getting as fat as anything, which is great to see that. And everything is, like I said, greened up. And in some fields where we haven't cut yet, the grass is really already up to our waist, which is great because it looks like there's lots, but not so great if you're going to try to cut hay from it. So, under the category, we're never happy. That's one of the little tricky parts about the whole thing. So the one thing that happened is that we suspected that we had a new resident in our retired chicken coop, and Ken found the evidence of that the other night. So I'm going to just show you a little video of who has taken over residence in our chicken coop, and I'll just put that on as I'm talking. So as you can see, it's the biggest skunk we have ever seen. So he's really something. So he's obviously very happy we're in his new home. I actually don't know if it's a male or a female, and I guess we'll find out. If it's a female, she'll have babies and they'll be walking around with her. So we're not using that chicken coop anymore, and so it's okay. She can live there. We know where she is in it, but we're really careful every time. We do put a few things in storage in there, so we're really careful when we're opening the door because we don't want to scare her. We haven't actually seen her in the coop. We just saw her, as you saw in the video, walking around the farm. She goes, I don't know what she's getting out of the manure pile that we have, but she seems to go over there and visit the manure pile and then go back to the coop. And I'm not sure, there must be something growing over the composting manure that she likes. So, and we have we haven't seen these birds before around here, but I guess they are quite common on Prince Edward Island. But we have a family of fox sparrows living somewhere right around the house. So we can't really tell if they're in the linden tree that's outside our bedroom window or if they're actually nesting in the wood. We have quite a large pile of wood that's still outside curing. And we've seen them on the wood pile itself. So we're not quite sure where they're nesting exactly. But every morning at 4:30, they start singing. Now, their song is absolutely beautiful. It's a very melodic tweedling sound. And but at 4:30 in the morning, it's an alarm clock that honestly we don't really need, but we're happy that they're so happy and cheerful when they wake up. And Ken is now dubbed the one that seems to be doing the most singing, the tweedler on the roof. So we're not sure if he's on the roof or if he's just in the linden tree, but that's what his name is now. So we're thank you, Tweedler on the Roof, for serenading us every single morning at 4:30. Anyway, that's sometimes I end up going to bed before 9 o'clock. That's why, because I'm up at 4:30 with the Tweedler on the roof. So without further ado, that's about it for the farm update, but we'll get right to the works in progress that I'm working on. I really thought that I was going to have Madeleine at least partially sewn up by the time I got to this podcast, but that really didn't happen. I'm going to show, I just brought the sleeves out with me this time because I'm just going to show the progress that I did make. I'm literally I have 10 more stitches to decrease before I'm finished the sleeve cap. And as always, I'm doing 2 at a time. So it definitely will be finished by the next podcast. And I haven't done any more of the duplicate stitch. So I think what I'll do, because that will all be done, I'm hoping that I'm going to be wearing this sweater in the next podcast. When I do the duplicate stitch, I will do film some of the work that I'm going to do on it, and I will insert it so that there's a little tutorial there on how to do it. And then that will help if you want to do duplicate stitch on a project. So again, the duplicate stitch is going in stripes that are going to come up from the brown section all the way up like in the pattern. And this pattern is called Madeleine by Galina Carroll, in case you haven't heard me talk about that before. And we'll do duplicate stitch, creating the stripes that go up. And of course you do that because you don't want to carry that dark yarn in color work behind such a light and kind of open fabric, because you would be able to see the shadows of the floats. So that's, Galina has made it so that you just do the duplicate stitch. And I actually have not used duplicate stitch on anything other than a Christmas ornament that I'm doing from Arne and Carlo's book or something like that. But I can really see, on a garment, I was always a little bit worried about how well I'd be able to mirror the stitches, the knitted stitches with the duplicate stitch, because my duplicate stitch wasn't necessarily that neat and tidy. However, as on all things, practice makes perfect, and I did start doing the duplicate stitch on the body part, and you can mirror the knit stitches really well, and especially in this kid silk haze, you can and if you make any little tiny tension mistakes or whatever, it disappears because of the fuzz of the kid silk haze. So in the colors that I'm working in is Nectar and Bark. So those are the colors that were suggested in the pattern. And so I'm knitting according to the pattern on that, everything. So will be done for the next podcast. Now on Paisley, this is my first sleeve. I couldn't do these. I could have done them in the round 2 at a time, but I really wasn't. That's a whole other story, 2 at a time in the round. And I've decided I'm just going to do it on the 12-inch. I have a 12-inch circular needles from Chiago, that's stainless steel one. So I'm working the sleeve on that. And everything is going really well. The body is done. I'll show the body again in case people haven't seen it. It's going really well, except for I'm afraid now that my sleeve is actually going to be a little bit too long. So as you may recall, if you've been watching the progress on this project, I didn't get the tension that was recommended in the pattern. So I ended up finding the fabric that I liked by swatching, doing all of the things that I had to do for that, and I'm ending up knitting the larger size of the sweater. And so the stitch count that I'm using is the larger size, but anything that's just height and length and so that kind of information I'm knitting to fit my own body. So I've finished the body, which was knit in the round with steeks, and I have everything done on this. It just needs to have the steeks cut and then the shoulders sewn up, and the sleeve is all done as well, this armhole. So what I'm worried about now is that I'm not going to be able to have enough length in my arm to be able to knit all of the increases that I need on the sleeve. Luckily, my arms are really not that big, so it doesn't matter if I don't have the width in the garment itself by not being able to do all the increases, but it will matter if I don't get a sufficient amount of them done in the length that I need. I was measuring this morning. This pattern shows the sleeve, just down over, like sort of to where the thickest part of your thumb is, so it's a longer sleeve anyway. And I was doing some measuring this morning with the number of rounds that I have to still do with the increases and the length that what my road gauge is, and it's going to be really, really tight for me to be able to get all of those increases done by the time I reach where my my underarm is. So I'm going to watch that very carefully. The only thing that's concerning me about that is that if I don't have the right number of stitches to decrease on the sleeve cap, then I may have a problem with the size of my sleeve cap versus the size of my armhole in my sweater. So I will have to do some math to make sure that my sleeve cap will now still fit in my armhole if I'm not able to do the length and the right decreases on the top part of the sleeve. If anybody has any hints about that, please feel free to make a comment. And it's going to be a question of math, so I'll be able to work it out. But it's giving me just a little bit of trepidation, let's say. And I'll also take a picture and insert it on because I know you can't really see at this distance, but I'll take a picture because you're doing increases every fourth or fifth row, according with my row gauge, and it's all in pattern. So I just, it's important that you keep the pattern going because it's so distinctive that if you didn't have the pattern right under here, you would definitely be able to see it. So I'll just take a closer picture of that. And I always do my increases and decreasing one stitch in. So I knit or purl the first stitch and then I do my increase or decrease. So every time I have to change colors, I think about how it's going to fit into the pattern. So it just takes a few minutes to do that. But the progress is coming nice. It's a beautiful thing, this sleeve. It's really lovely. So getting close to the I can see the light at the end of the tunnel on the Paisley, and I still have another sleeve to do, but this actually goes pretty fast. You can knit pretty quickly on the sleeve because it's such a small round, and I find that those right size circular needles for the sleeve make it very efficient. So that's it for my projects, and I will just give you a little hint about what I'm going to do for my next project. This pattern was brought to my attention by a customer who purchased the yarn to make it, and it's in Kate Davies' 10 Years in the Making book. So we have this book in the store, and the pattern is called Even Dune, and there's two patterns in this book. There's a cardigan version and there's a pullover version, and I'm going to make the pullover version. Kate Davies has a beautiful yarn that she knits it out of, but our Selkirk worsted is actually right around the same gauge and grist as the Kate Davies yarn, so I'll be doing it in Selkirk worsted, and I'm going to use one of the gradient kits. It's a striped pullover, and you can do all the stripes the same color, or you can make a colorful combination. So I'm going to use one of the gradient color shades to do that, the groups of color, and because I like the fact that it's all slightly different, but I'm not going to use contrasting colors. I'll use the gradient in the stripes for that. And I would like to launch a CAL with the 10 Years in the Making book. So I will be knitting the Even Dune, and I will set up a CAL, and I'll form a thread on Ravelry for that. And if anybody else wants to join me in that, then that would be great to have other people knitting some of the beautiful, beautiful patterns out of this book that Kate has done over the last 10 years. It's just a really nice collection of her work. And I'll give a little bit more detail on that in the newsletter. Okay, so that's going to be the next project, and I expect I will cast that on relatively quickly. These other things are kind of finishing up for sure. The Madeleine will be done, and then I'll get started on the Even Do. So that's going to be a fun project. It's fairly straightforward and just a nice relaxing pullover to do. So then the next thing that's happening is we received a little trunk show from Rowan, and I'm wearing a garment from that trunk show, and the trunk show is Lisa Richardson's Ease book. So all of the we received 4 pieces that have been knit out of the Ease book, and just show you in case you don't recognize that book. So what I'm wearing is the Okra, which is a poncho in the book. Well, sort of. It actually has a seam in the book, but when the sample arrived, there is no seam, so it's just open. So now it's a poncho. I guess it was what you would call a swancho in the book, because they actually seam this down, or maybe that's still considered a poncho. Anyway, it's a really, really beautiful garment. It's knit in Rowan fine lace. So I did a deep dive on Rowan fine lace in the last episode, if you want to take a look at that under our Rowan review section. The color is vintage, so that's number 926 vintage, and again the name is Okra. It's, as we've always said when we receive these samples knitted from the trunk show, they're just so beautiful in person, and the photography is wonderful. Rowan does a very, very good job of photography and styling their garments, but when you actually see these garments in person, you're just continually impressed about how well done the garments are and the designs are. And once you've knit 1 or 2 Rowan patterns, all of the patterns are kind of written in the same kind of they use the same technical terms and they use the same format. So it gets to be very easy to knit up a Rowan pattern because you have anything you've learned from new patterns that you tried, you apply to the next garment you knit, because they keep a lot of consistency with that. So again, the color is vintage, which is this beautiful muted purple hue. And but this would be great in any of the Rowan colors. And the lace work on this is just lovely. It's just enough. So this is a project that you would get some easy parts because it's mostly straight stockinette, but then you have these little lace panels to keep it interesting. So that's the garment I'm wearing. I did also want to show another garment that we received called, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, capsicum. Okay, so all of the patterns in Ease are names of plants, and this is I think they're mostly plants that are used in cooking. And this is the capsicum, and I'm not going to put it on a bust because it really doesn't do it justice, but I know that this is not the best way to show it. I would put it on, but it's knit in a size that's a little bit too small for me, so that's also not very good. But it's the color, again, this is the same color combination that was sent to us for another garment that was in the last trunk show that we received. And it's Kid Silk Haze in jelly with pear fine lace, and you have this lovely open work cardigan, which is just an open cardigan, and the fabric of this is so beautiful. It's really nice. You have a very nice shawl collar. I'll show the real picture because I know that this is not the best, but you have this little detail which I think is really cute. It's just this little kind of half belt that's there, and it hooks into a little open work here, like a big buttonhole. So if you need it just to pull it, put a little bit of security around it, if you didn't want to open it or wear it completely open, you have that. Or you could also actually put another little half belt on the other side, and then just be able to tie it in a bow or something like that. But again, I'm showing this. I know that this is not the best way to show it, but I'm showing this just because this color combination is amazing. This is not the color that is knit in the book, and I suspect that when all of the shortages were happening with the yarns, that these were the colors that were most available for the test knitters to knit. So some of the colors got changed from what was shown in the book. And then this third thing that I want to show from this book is this little sweet kind of cropped. It's not really a shrug. I'm wrecking the place. It's not really a shrug. It's kind of halfway between a cropped sweater and this beautiful cropped sweater. It's really short in the back, as you can see. This one is called Butternut. So this is not the color that Butternut is shown in the book either. This is apple. So this is made out of creative linen, and the color is apple number 629. And it's shown as an open cardigan, but I've put on this little one of the pedestal buttons from Jules. So this is the floral 1-inch pedestal button. And as some of you may know, with Jules closures, they always have a little stem on them with a screw on the back so that you can create a fastener for your knitted object without interfering with the integrity of the stitching. So you just simply insert the little stem through a stitch and then screw on the backing, and you have a closure. I think I'm actually going to try to put this just over my head so you can see it, because it's really sweet. I'm just going to take this off. Just set it in behind there. Green is not necessarily great with the blue, but okay, this is a little bit sticking to my sweater, but you can see how that looks. It's really, the linen is this is like a light merino t-shirt I have on, but there. So you can see that just where it comes, just sits right in your waist on the front, and then this little closure just is perfect. When this closure is not on, these 2 points kind of just naturally go towards the outside, so it creates like a little collar almost. But so that's the Butternut by Lisa Richardson. Okay, so I got the butternut off. So what just happened there is that Ken was behind the camera and he's waving himself out because he was afraid that because the fabric was sticking to my t-shirt, that when I took off the butternut, that my whole top was going to come off. So we decided it would be better to do that off without recording that. Nothing happened. We would have been okay. But I did take the opportunity to do a quick change. I have put on the Earhart shawl, and Earhart is a shawl that was done in Rowan magazine number 67, and we did kits for this shawl. And again, it's knit in fine lace and kid silk haze. And we were out of stock of the kits because we didn't have the magazines, or we didn't have enough fine lace in stock to do the kits. But we have both, and we have restocked the kits online. So if you're interested in this beautiful knit, again, this combination of kid silk haze with Rowan fine lace is just beautiful, very light and airy. It weighs absolutely nothing, so just to have something over your shoulder. And it is, in case you want to recognize it by the cover, it is a pattern that's in Rowan 67, and those kits are back. In stock. So this is just, I don't know what it is about this, the color combination and the way that the colors play together. This just puts me in a happy mood. So again, this is the Earhart shawl. The designer is Anika Andrea Volka. hopefully I pronounced her name right. And this is one of our favorite projects that we've had knit up for the store, and really beautiful texture and fabric. So those are back in stock in the shop. We have quite a big shop update this episode. There's a lot of things that we have to show, so I'm going to get right to it. A couple different things. I want to show my VAMPS. I talked about these VAMPS in a couple episodes ago. These VAMPS, this is a pattern out of the Saltwater Classics book. So they were first shown in Saltwater Classics. And then there is another pattern for VAMPS in Saltwater Gifts. So in case you're not familiar with what these books are, so the Saltwater Classics is the second book in the Saltwater series. So the first book was Saltwater Mittens, which was all about mittens. Then the second book was Classics, that has a wide variety of things that you can knit in it. And these VAMPS showed up first in the Classics. Now, in the pattern, in the Saltwater Classics book, they are a little bit higher. They come up a bit further. But Janet, who works with us here, wanted to have wool socks that she could wear in her golf shoes. Excuse me. She golfs a lot. And so she asked me to make a yarn, and then she knit the VAMPS, but she did it to the ankles. And she gave me a pair to wear. I test drove them, and I spun this yarn specifically for this purpose. So I did a little bit of a tighter twist, and Janet knit them by hand in a tighter gauge than like a gauge that you would knit for socks. So when you're doing socks, you always want to knit at a fairly tight gauge to give good durability. And people always ask us, because it's 100% wool, they're always wondering how long the sock would last if it's 100% wool with nothing else in it. So in our regular sock yarn, we use mohair for strengthening, but in this we wanted 100% wool. And I have been literally wearing these VAMPS every single day since I got them, I think, around the 15th of May, and I have been wearing them every single day. And I can tell you, in my work shoes that I work in the mill, and I can tell you there's not a mark on them. They look exactly the same as the day that Janet gave them to me. There's not even a pill on them. So this is pretty amazing. I have to say, even I was amazed at this. And they are so comfortable to wear. It's not the thinnest yarn. It's kind of it would be a worsted, but it's definitely not Aran, but it's not a light worsted either. It's a true worsted yarn. I think she knit these on a 2.25 needle, and so the fabric is fairly, it's not open at all. It's fairly dense, but the sock itself is not that thick. I'm just wearing them in my regular work shoes. So it's not, obviously dress shoes, but they're quite comfortable, and it's just amazing. Like not even to have a pill on them. So I'll take a close-up picture of that so you can see what I'm talking about. And they're just amazing. So, we decided that we want to have some of these for sale in the shop. So if you're not up for making them, then we will have them for sale in the shop. So Janet's made a couple different sizes, and she's just put a little stripe on the top just to make them. This is wool is our natural black. So from our black sheep, just their 100% natural black wool. So no, not dyed, but they only come in one color, and it's this dark chocolate brown. And Janet did a few pairs just with a little bit of a stripe for interest on the top. So I will tell you that this is the smallest size. The ankle is a little bit tight on purpose because they're so short. She wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be sliding in your shoes. So they are a little bit tighter than. Well, they're not loose, let's put it that way. They do fit right around your ankle. And So you don't be surprised at that if you purchase them. And mine, this would have been, these ones have not been worn, obviously. So my ankle on mine would have been slightly bigger because they're a bigger size. You can see that they're quite a bit bigger. So this is, they do loosen up and kind of, they still fit. I don't want to say snug because that makes you think that maybe you can feel them around your ankles. It's not true. They do stretch enough that they're comfortable, but they don't slip down in your shoes. So since that was such a success, we decided that we should have some handmade socks as well. And I just have these little tags on them because I've measured all of the feet so that I can make a size range, or put a size range on the shop, the online shop. So these are handmade, but they're knit on Janet's knitting machine. And it's a wool sock. The yarn is the same weight, but this is a 3-ply. So a 3-ply will be even more durable than a 2-ply. But the tension is a little bit looser than what was done by hand on the VAMPS. This pattern is actually Briggs & Little pattern, which I'll put a link to. So you'd have to buy the pattern. But to be honest, any simple sock part, it's just a vanilla sock. There is no ribbing down the leg, but there's ribbing on the top, and there are plain sock patterns in the saltwater books as well. So there's socks in Saltwater Gifts, which is the 3rd book in the series, and there's a couple pairs of socks in the Saltwater Classic as well, I think. So but there's quite a few in the gifts book, which makes sense because lots of people give socks as gifts. And there's the Briggs & Little, which is a tried and true sock pattern. So I will also put these up in the shop because we've got quite a few pairs done. Again, this is a 3-ply, but the tension is a little bit looser than the VAMPS. I fully expect they're going to wear exactly the same. I have a pair of these as well, so I might switch out my VAMPS if it cools off a little bit and put these on and wear them around and see how they work. But I know that we raise the sheep and it's our wool, and this. But the feeling of this particular spin that I did, it's very soft and kind of silky feeling, but it's still it'll be a nice wearing wool for socks, and again 100% wool. I will just make a few comments about how we're going to talk about the sizing online because that's kind of hard to do. So what we did was what I've done is I've measured the actual foot from the back of the heel to the end of the toe. I will put that measurement on the listing, but the truth is if you buy your socks and it's like you use 9 to 11, or I think men's is usually 10 to 13, they would be, all of the sizes fit in that range. So the 9 to 11 on sock sizing, people think that that's the shoe size, but it's actually the length of the foot. So the most common one for women is 9 inches to 11 inches, and all of the socks fit into that. And for men, the 10 to 13 is the length, but we don't have any at the large size for men. But we do have the 9 to 11 on men, I think fits a 5 to 8 men's shoe. And we do have some of the socks that are bigger than that, but I will put the inches of the sock foot on the listing as well. So we will have those. Again, it's the natural black, so they're all black. They're all this color. And you can write and let us know in the comments if you would be interested in me spinning this yarn for people that want to knit their own. So what I thought that I might do is, because this is not our typical way that we spin our yarns that we have on the shelf, is do some special batches. We still have some of the black wool left. Do some special batches for the socks and for the VAMPS, and make a skein that's big enough that you can get a full pair of socks. So these socks actually weigh 136 grams, so a little bit more than 4 ounces, so that we would make a larger skein, probably 150 grams or something like that, so that you'd be able to get the full the full size of the sock, and it comes up to just over the calf for most people, I think. So those are in the shop. Also in the shop, we have the gradient kits that we've been making. So on the last episode, you saw the blue gradient, which was the first one that we did. This gradient is based on A Night Without Stars and goes all the way down to November Sky, the lightest color that we make. So these two colors were existing shades. And then we made 3 more colors, which were Blue Lobster and Atlantic Sky and Northumberland, Atlantic Sky and Northumberland Blue. So Northumberland Blue is the middle one, and Atlantic Sky is the second lightest one. All of these gradient kits, as I said, are in the previous episode. We've also made full skeins of all of these colors as well. So when we launch new colors because of the gradient, we have full skeins and they're available as part of our regular catalog now. The skeins in the kit are 50 yards. So it's 50 yards and you've got five colors in each of the kits. So this one you saw on the last podcast. The people that have signed up for our newsletter had a preview last week of the Amethyst gradient, which is based on amethyst brooch. So for viewers, if you're not signed up to our newsletter, this will be the first time that you're seeing it. The people that have the newsletter, they saw it last week. So amethyst brooch is the first color, and then it goes all the way down to Mayflower is the lightest color. So these two colors are existing shades. And then we have three colors that we made that are new as well. And to be honest, I don't remember all the names that we gave them. So they're all based on flowers. So I do know that I think I can remember. So there's Lady Slipper is the next one, darker to Mayflower. Then there is Aster, which is the middle part of the gradient. And the darker one is Purple Coneflower. Okay, I pulled that out of my head, so that's pretty good. I thought for a second I wasn't going to be able to remember them. So these are the new gradient for the viewers. And you hear me saying about if you signed up for the newsletter, what we're doing is when we launch new colorways or new products, we are actually featuring it in our newsletter first for our subscribers for our newsletter. If you have an account with us on our online shop, you're not automatically signed up for the newsletter. You have to check off that you allow marketing email or email marketing, because our platform that we have, our online shop, is very careful about privacy. So you have to opt in to be able to get the email marketing. So if you think you've signed up for the newsletter but you're not getting any, then it's because you need to check that off in your profile to allow us to send you the email. So new for you viewers, and you've already seen these for the people that have email notification. And we had a third one because we're doing the podcast every second week, but we send the newsletter out every Friday. And this one is the grays. So these are all existing colors that we have already, but we did a full gradient with the grays. So you have crow wing, and then you have slate, which is the next darkest color, seagull, the third color. You have pearl, and pearl is the lightest, and then you have oyster is the second lightest. So it's crow wing, slate, seagull, oyster, and pearl. So this gradient is also available, and this is the only one that'll have existing shades because we had already done that as to have neutrals in our lineup before. So this one is out, and folks that get the newsletter will have another new one that they'll be able to see this week and have the first chance to purchase, and that is going to be a red gradient. And then we have one more in the series that we want to do, so that'll be for the next week. So that's it for that. So I think that is most of the new products that I wanted to show for the shop update, but I do have one more note that the Ultimate Sweater book that was been written by Amy Herzog, we had ordered quite a few of them, and they've completely sold out. So I've been in contact with our distributor here, and they have to order more from the publisher, and that has been done. And I'm waiting for that a note from them to let me know that it's been shipped. So I'm not going to put them up on the store yet, but I will send out in the newsletter when we're back in stock of the Ultimate Sweater book, because they just placed the order, and they don't know for sure when the delivery is going to be. So I don't want to put anything out there until I find out for sure when it comes. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's short. The distributor is pretty confident that it's going to be fairly quick, like within a few weeks. So the minute I know for sure that they're on their way, then I will put it in the shop for sale again, and I will notify folks by newsletter that it's back in stock. So I think for the this part, the in the shop part of the podcast, I think we're just about done. So as has become our custom in the last few podcasts, we're going to go into the mill for the next segment, and there we're going to talk about the different twists in yarn and give you a little bit more of an up close look at that. And since we talked about how twist affects the wearability and durability of the yarns in the socks, we thought it would be a good time to do that. Right after the in the mill section, then we will you will be able to see the harmony part for this episode. So I'll say a quick goodbye here, and ask you that if you enjoyed the video, if you could give us a thumbs up. And we, as always, we're always reading the comments and we try to answer all of them. And so that's good engagement. And I would really like to know about what you think about the yarn kits for the wool socks. And we are also considering doing new colors in our point prim sock yarn as well. So they may not be new to our catalog, but offering the sock yarn in different colors. And if you want to make a comment about that, what you think would be a great addition to the sock yarn shade selection that we have, then you could also enter that into the comments. And don't forget to select your notifications so that you know whenever we release a new video. So with that, I'll say goodbye from the shop, and I'll meet you back in the mill. Bye. Hi, so we're back in the mill, and I'm sitting in front of my 12 spindle spinner, and we showed in a previous episode just exactly how that works and how I work with the machines. And right next to me, out of the frame of the shot, is the plier, which you saw as well in that previous episode. So this is where, you know, all the magic happens, I guess, where all that fiber becomes the yarn. And the first step of that is to create a ply, and then the next step is to spin the plies in the opposite direction together to create the yarn itself. I spin my plies with a Z twist, and I ply the yarn with an S twist. This is probably the most common yarn that you would find in North America, certainly, and most of Europe, but there are mills that do the opposite. They spin the plies with an S twist and then ply the yarn with a Z twist. That does make a difference for knitters and crocheters. So most knitters in North America and a lot of parts of Europe knit what they call the Western style, and the Western style includes continental and throwing and flicking and all of those style of knitting. There are some areas where they knit using what's called an Eastern style, and in that case they wrap the yarn around the needle in the opposite direction, and so you can imagine that has a slightly different effect on the way that the yarn performs. So when you're doing Western style knitting, and you're knitting with a yarn that has been S-plied, which is the most common combination around here, then the act of knitting itself actually helps to tighten the twist slightly. For crocheters, however, the way that they hold their yarn and twist their yarn, that S-ply actually loosens slightly. So that doesn't mean that you can't crochet with an S-plied yarn. It just means that you may want to be a little bit conscious
of how tightly your twists are, how the yarn is designed so that when you're crocheting, you don't loosen the yarn too much. If you're knitting, it's fine because you're actually going to tighten it a little bit. So that's all a little bit complicated. So if you're not used to, if you're used to spinning, hand spinning, then you'll understand right away what we're talking about. But if you're not used to that, I have a diagram which I'll show here. This diagram shows very clearly what the different directions are. So spinning with a Z twist means that I'm actually spinning in a clockwise direction. When I take those plies to the plier, I'm plying in a counterclockwise direction, which is the direction that the S twist goes. So the diagram, you can see the little shape of the Z and you can see the little shape of the S, so you get that. So that's the technicality. In the end, you just want beautiful yarn to knit with, but for producing the yarn, that makes a difference. And we also look at twists per inch. And twist per inch gives you really the structure of the yarn that you're making. And you can have quite loose twists with very few twists per inch in your yarn, and you can have a yarn that has a higher twist. And I'm going to show you some examples of what we do here and what the differences are and how they look. If you want something that's more durable, the more twists per inch your final yarn has, the more sturdy the yarn is going to be. So when I was talking about the sock yarn that I made for Janet for her socks that she did for the shop, I talked about a higher twist because I did twist those yarns higher at a higher rate because I knew that they were specifically going to be used for socks. And there is no other fiber in the yarn to strengthen it further other than the natural strength of the wool. So what does that look like when you actually make yarn? And we're just going to zoom in on a display that I have here in front of me. And I'm going to show you I have 4 different yarns here. I'm just going to remove this ruler. So the first yarn that I'm showing here is our Aran weight. And this yarn is a 3-ply yarn with a twist per inch of about 7. And I'm going to show you how I count that. And we're counting the little bumps that are on here, and I'll do a close-up of that. The second yarn is a sock yarn. And because this is the sock yarn, I spin it with a slightly higher twist per inch. So I don't want to get too technical, but just to give you a reference of what I'm talking about, the plies that I use for the Aran yarn, I'm spinning on my machines. The setting is about 5.5 twists per inch. When I'm spinning the sock yarn, I'm spinning them with about between a 7.5 and an 8 twists per inch. The next 2 yarns I have here on my board is the Selkirk worsted. And you can see right away that the twist is much lighter. There's a lot less twists in the yarn. Ironically, I spin it at the same twist per inch on my machine as I do the Aran weight, but because there's only 2 plies, you don't have as many bumps. You don't have a third ply in there to fill in the gaps if you want. And so I spin at 5.5 twist per inch on the plies, and then when I ply the yarn, I'm plying at about 2.4, and that gives you a twist per inch of the final yarn of about 5. And then the final yarn that I'm going to show you is our lace weight, so also spun at about 8 twists per inch for the plies, and then plied to give me about a 7 twists per inch. And I want 7 on this 2-ply yarn because it makes it more sturdy, because it's so fine that I want to make sure that you're able to knit with it without having to worry about it breaking. So if you want to know a yarn what your twists per inch are, there's the rulers that you can buy that actually have little magnifying glasses on them, and I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So you can see here with the line, and it's right next to the inches, and I'm just going to line it up here. And to count the twist per inch, you just count the number of bumps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in 1 inch. So like I said, the twist per inch on this yarn is 7. that's my personal preference for a multi-purpose yarn. Like I said, other people designing yarn would like a looser twist per inch, and some would like tighter, but this is kind of what I like to knit with, and I'm making the yarn, so I've decided to do my yarns that way. So then I'm going to show you the next one under the magnifying, and this is the sock yarn. And I'm not going to bother counting the twist, but you can see how that looks. It's a little bit tighter. The plies are quite fine, so it is the yarn itself is obviously finer, and you can see actually all the halo with that mohair that's in it. We'll do the same thing. We'll put the ruler over the with the magnifying, and you can see the Selkirk worsted, how much more loose and lofty it is, because the twists per inch are less in the ply. And finally, we'll let you take a look at the lace under the magnifying glass. And again, this has mohair in it, so you can see the halo effect, and you can see how those bumps are actually closed in quite a bit. Because the spinning is on small machines and the yarn is farm yarn, or wool is farm wool, there is a little bit of inconsistency in the yarns up close that you can see. And you can see that in some of the spots where the drafting is a little bit finer, you get more twists per inch. So I don't mind that, because that means that the yarn is has a little bit more strength in the parts where it's the finest, which is great for knitting, so that you don't have any breakage or anything. And I find that this is about 5 twists per inch, like in the Selkirk worsted, is about as low as I would go, because it doesn't split when you're knitting with it. Your needle's not poking through it all the time, and but you certainly can have yarns that are looser that are lovely as well. But I find that this is a good number of twists per inch in a yarn that's quite loosely plied, so that you don't have splitting and your yarn is cohesive. Whenever you're plying your yarn, you're aiming to have a balanced yarn. And when we talk about balanced yarn, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to pick this up and show you, is that when you take your yarn off of the skein, it shouldn't twist up on itself. So I'm sure everybody has had yarns that they've purchased, and some manufacturers, you get commercially manufactured yarns that do the same thing, is that they start to twist like this when you're holding them. That would be considered not a balanced yarn. Depending on how tight that twist goes, it can actually create a little bit of a bias on your garment that you're knitting if it's too tight. Or you may find when you're bringing it off the this is on a comb, but when you're bringing it off the ball, that it can start twisting more. A little bit doesn't hurt, and sometimes I purposely leave a little bit more in some of my yarns, because as you work with the finished yarn, by the time you dye it and everything, some of the twist comes out. So sometimes I purposely leave a little bit. And if you've got like a slight twist when you do this holding test, it's not going to be a big deal. But if you've got something that's curling up on itself while you're knitting, that means that you have the chance of creating a bias in the item that you're knitting. So that's a balanced yarn. And we'll just check this one. Sometimes the Selkirk worsted is a little bit, I leave a little bit more twist because it's a bit looser. So you can see it did like a half twist, so that has a little bit more. But this is also fine. It's not actually winding around itself. So, and I can change this. So what happens is, if what I did with the sock yarn that we were talking about earlier, I spun it, the strands themselves, the plies themselves are about the same as my Aran weight. They're a little slightly different, but instead of twisting at 5.5 twists per inch, I actually twisted it at 7. And that means that I have to ply it at a higher twist per inch to get a balanced yarn. So the plies are actually, I think it comes out to be around 7 or 8 rather than just the 7 here. So this is 7, but the sock yarn in the 2-ply that I used comes in about 7, and the 3-ply is even a little bit higher than that, like 8 or 9. So that gives it more durability, but yet it will still be a balanced yarn, because that's what I'm aiming for. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight in, when people are talking about twist per inch and S plying and Z twisting and spinning and so forth, and that now you can see how you can tell what your yarn is. And everybody has some kind of a different personal favorite that they like to knit with, and you can look at a yarn and evaluate it and see if it's something that you find is what you want for your project, and you'll be able to have a little bit more insight into how the making of the plies and the plying of the yarn, how that works in the structure of the yarn. So I hope that was helpful. We're going to stop this discussion here and head out to see the harmony part. So have a great 2 weeks, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time for our next episode. Thanks.